Okay, tonight's video is about questions we're going to work on tomorrow, which are the volume of rotation when it's wrapped around a different axis. So the equation we're always going to use is our ya-ya equation, where volume is going to be equal to pi, the integral of y minus a squared minus y minus a squared dx. Remember, the a is the axis. It's the same in both one that we're wrapping around, and this is really y2 minus y1, where this is the upper curve and this is the lower curve. And of course from a to b, where a is the lower bound and b is the upper bound. So when we work on a problem, it's going to look on finding a couple different things. We're going to identify our two curves. Then that's going to be our first thing we'll do. First is identify the curves. Second is we'll identify the axis. And then third, if need be, figure out the bounds. There's three ways we find that. They either give them to us, or we get a picture. And not usually, but a lot of times you have to take the two equations and set them equal to each other. When they do that, it's almost always a quadratic and some line, in which case you just bring it all to one side, factor, and solve. Doesn't happen a lot, but sometimes it does. So let's take a look at the problem. Okay, so we have our two curves, y equals negative x squared plus 8, and y equals x squared. And we're going to wrap that around the x-axis. Oh, I lied. We're going to wrap that around the line y equals 3, from x equals negative 2 to x equals 1. Okay, so what we need to do is, first of all, identify our two curves, which is our first step. I did that in blue, so I'll do it in blue here. Blue. Here's curve 1. Here's curve 2. We have to figure out what the axis is. Oop, wrong way. The axis is y equals 3. And we know we're starting at negative 2, and we're going to 1. So in setting up this integral, even without a picture, I can start. It's going to be pi, the integral, from negative 2 to 1 of, and now I just got to figure a couple things out. I got to figure out who's the upper curve and who is the lower curve. Well, if my interval is negative 2 to 1, I just need to pick a number in that interval to test. I'm going to test 0. If I put in 0, the top curve gives me 8, the lower curve gives me 0, so this is my upper and this is my lower. So it's going to be the integral of y minus a squared. So it's going to be negative x squared plus 8 squared minus x squared squared, close parentheses, dx. Now this is one that might end up being a non-calculator, where you don't have to fill all the numbers and get the answers, but you do have to integrate this. So I'm going to bring this to the next page. So now before I integrate, I'm going to square both parts of the inside. And it usually works, but it's an easy one to work out. So I'm going to square this. I'm going to do this by my shortcut method of, first I'm going to, the general rule is if you're doing something a plus b squared, it's equal to a squared plus 2ab plus b squared. So I square the first thing, which becomes x to the fourth. I multiply the two together and get negative 8x, and double that, negative 16x squared. I know I said 8x, I should have said 8x squared. And then square the last and get plus 64, close parentheses, minus x squared dx. If you want to simplify, you can combine the x squared. If you don't want to, it's absolutely fine. And you can integrate away. So it's going to be pi, the parentheses, 1/5 x to the 5th minus 16 over 3 x to the 3rd plus 64x minus 1/3 x to the 3rd from negative 2 to 1. I know it's weird I put the actual integral parts inside the parentheses, but this is what we can do with pi afterwards. So what I'm going to do is erase a little on the top here. Hold on. And for a non-calculator question on the AP, all you have to do is fill in the 1 and the negative 2, upper minus lower. So it would look just like, so there's the portion of the 1 filled in, minus, and there is the lower part. That's far enough to go. If you want to, if you really feel the need to write some more out, like sometimes I do, I can't help it. I'll go pi. This becomes 1/5 minus 16 over 3 plus 64 minus 1/3. I'm always going to leave them in that set of parentheses so I don't mess up this end down here. So what I did with the next part first is if I'm going to work it out, which I don't have to, but I'm doing it anyway, first I find the numbers, then I do the signs after that. So this is 5 negative signs, which is going to be a negative number. This is going to be 3 negative signs, and another negative sign makes it positive because it's even a number. It's going to be 1 negative here, and it's going to be 1 positive there. And at that point, I'm going to hold my ground. So that's enough of an answer. Okay, we're going to work on a couple problems like this tomorrow. Take care.